Is October 30th, 2008. We're meeting today with Mr. Reinhold Stoll at his home in Fort Collins, Colorado. My name is Brad Hoops. I'm the interviewer for the Northern Colorado Veterans History Project. Welcome, Mr. Stoll, and thanks for participating in the project today.
I appreciate your effort.
Let's start out, if we could. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your date of birth, where you were born, a little bit about your family.
Well, I was born in Windsor, Colorado, one of 5 children, and I was in the middle. So when I did my tricks, I was always in trouble. I had an older brother, older sister, younger brother, younger sister. I spent all my entire life in that Windsor area. We lived there, and my father ran the elevator there, and they used to bring wheat from Wyoming, and he'd store it there, and that house had about 90,000 bushel capacity, and then it was hooked to the model flour mill in Greeley, and they, as they needed protein wheat, we'd load it in boxcars and ship it to Windsor. So we did some stoop labor, like thinned and topped sugar beets, and we also did any work like as a family, stoop labor, picking potatoes, and I want to tell you, we never really realized how tough it was for my parents, but somewhere along the line, they decided that each child should have a life insurance, and so each child, of course, had a $1,000 out, and they carried that. I don't know how they paid for it, but they did. So I graduated from high school in Windsor High and played football, and I worked, my senior year, I worked in the sugar factory as an assistant to the sugar boiler on the first cart. And then we decided that a bunch of us fellas about the same age, we joined the Navy.
Now, what year did you graduate from high school?
In 41.
41. Okay, so did you join before Pearl Harbor or?
No, after.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
Do you remember where you were when you heard about Pearl Harbor and what you were thinking?
I was at home alone. My parents were visiting, had dinner with a family friend, Wagner's, who farmed north of town, and I called them, and I was home alone, and I can imagine they have 3 boys.
Oh boy, all military age
Yeah.
at that time. Oh boy.
And my older brother Harold had joined the Navy prior to World War I, and they elected not to take him. He's physically unfit. But my younger brother, Al, I believe he was drafted, and I volunteered. And at that time, it was just like that, in that the draft board had set up their program. These guys would run to Denver, join the service, and they were always in. And I was lucky. I think the next day I couldn't have done that. I'd end up in the infantry.
Well, now you must have enlisted shortly after Pearl Harbor. Then, how much longer after Pearl?
Well, about a year.
Oh, so you didn't enroll till 42?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, let me ask you then. Here's a bunch of boys from landlocked Colorado. What are you doing joining the Navy, or what made you decide to join the Navy?
Well, a lot of our German boys had joined the Navy in the town. what motivated them. But I always thought that I didn't want to be marching up and down. And as far as really being patriotic, hell, I was too young to. But after we got into that, of course, in the service, I realized that we had a job to do, and I think we did it.
Now, how much further after you enlisted before you shipped out then for boot camp?
Well, I went to Farragut, Idaho as recruit training, and that had to be political ploy, and that was the worst place in the United States to have a recruit training. We got there in November, and it snowed, and we never saw the grinder again. And the grinder, of course, where we did our marching and close order drill. But and then from there, I had 9 weeks of recruit training, and they based on, I guess, our interview or whatever, they let us choose what school. Well, I went to aviation machinist mate school, and they sent me to Norman, Oklahoma, and I took in that training, and then there was an opportunity to go to aerial gunner school, and that was at Purcell, Oklahoma, south of Oklahoma City. And I don't know what happened, but I found out later they said I was inept. In other words, I didn't pass the test. And hell, I was shooting with the best of them. So I guess what happened, I found out later, they gave us a night vision test. And he said, Stoll, he said, you're blind as a bat. And I said, what the hell are you talking about? I did every crosses up, down. I thought I passed it.
I'll be done.
But I didn't pass it.
Let me interrupt you here and just back up a little bit. You said you had enlisted with a bunch of buddies. Did you guys all ship off together?
Yeah, we went to Denver, the four of us.
Okay.
And one fella, Victor Schoenholz, he didn't make it for some medical problem. And Manweiler, Stoll, and Meyer, we both made it. And so we were always together. We rode the train overnight to Farragut, and when we lined up, we were buck naked and back up with shooting on both arms. And there went Manweiler, the cut off.
Oh, okay.
And he's another company.
Okay.
Well, then Vern and I were together. They had an inspection about 3 days later. The guy said, oh, you went like this. He said, Corman, put him on the stretcher. He's got, what'd he say? Well, he had measles.
I'll be there.
So there goes Meyer. And then, of course, they quarantined the whole goddamn barracks.
Oh, boy.
So it didn't work out at all.
How did you find the transition from civilian life into military life? How was that initial?
Well, my problem, I guess, was I was 19, and these other guys were 18. And at that time, the Navy, and whether they're still doing it or not, they called it a skivvy cruise, and they would take a 17-year-old boy and give him 3 years, where normal enlistment was 4 years. And so I was a little older than the average. And what bothered me most is, I guess in that 9 weeks, they actually mentally get you turned around. Uh, and, and this happened to me several times. There wasn't anything I could do about it, but I guess I recognized the bosun's mate was a second-class seaman in 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 Panama, Canal when uh, the Pearl Harbor happened. So now he's the chief, and he's a rummy, and so he's telling you, and he's calling us shit heels, and I never was a shit heel, but they always did that whole group, and they didn't break my spirit, but I knew what they were doing.
Okay, okay. So moving ahead then, you didn't make it through, I guess, aerial gunnery school.
No.
Now where did you go from
Well,
there then?
they shipped us then to what they called an outgoing unit in Norfolk, Virginia. And there we worked on seaplanes, PBMs and BBYs. And the experience we had there, we'd hang new motors or worked over motors on those seaplanes, and then we had to fly in it. One day we went out to meet apparently a convoy coming back from Murmansk, Russia, and there were, I think I counted 78 ships.
Oh, that must have been a sight.
Yeah, that was a sight. So first of all, when we took off, he run that thing up 13 miles, it wouldn't go off. So he taxi back, and they get a speedboat out there and make some waves, because that was like a tub,
Okay.
suction. So we get out there, we quite a ways out there, a couple of hours, and see this convoy. And then we're coming back, and the starboard motor quit. And I looked out that porthole, and that wing was going about 18 inches till he got that prop feathers, you see, so it get rid of that vibration. And so, of course, they had to line up the hatch and put your parachute on and get it good and tight.
Had you ever flown before that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, had you? Okay.
Yeah, so they were losing so much altitude. But we made it back to Norfolk, and he put her down, and I want to tell you, that's like you were standing in a can and somebody was beating it. It was quite a thrill. But we were lined up on the hatch and ready to jump out. And
Jeez.
somebody had a bottle of whiskey, so we were living in Quonset, and so we had a drink. And it was just still kind of a little shaky, and they said, what do you think, Stoll? I said, well, if you'll remember, the gas guy was me. I wasn't going to jump out of that SOB unless it was burning. you see, you had sharks there.
Oh, jeez.
But we made it, and then from there I was transferred to Camp Hueneme, and there we got there a little early. They didn't have everything, running water. And
Where's that located at?
in California.
Okay.
It's north of LA, but we shipped out from there. So then we go to Hawaii, and we're just troops, more or less, and that was my first experience as a troop ship.
Well, let's talk about that. How was that crossing? I mean, here once again, here's a boy from Windsor, Colorado. How was that crossing for you? Did you
It
get your
was,
did you get
it
your sea
was,
legs?
it was terrible. I was deathly ill, and when we ran into a storm at night, the they had racks 6 high, and of course I unfortunately was on the bottom, and I had 5 guys getting sick on me.
Oh, jeez.
And of course there's no water. You can shower with salt water, and we had so many troops in there that you could fill your canteen, and say at 9 o'clock they'd shut the water off, and so it wasn't too pleasant.
Oh boy.
We get to Hawaii and we go by Hickam Field. We can still see the
Was there still a lot of damage there?
yeah. You could see that those hangars had burned, and we went back by battleships. They were upside down. Anyway, we go to camp then, and we get liberty. We go to Hawaii, and a lot of the guys we visited the whorehouses. Got a big tattoo, and they'd come in, lost their skivvy, there's their tie, and they'd bunch of toilet paper around their arm, and they're just a bunch of dummies.
Yeah.
So we were more or less, we didn't really, we had to muster, make sure that no one was going over the fence, and we had port and starboard, and they'd had to make some work, pick butts up and stuff like that. And then it really kind of hit me. I was in charge. I'd taken a test in Denver, and I went in as a fireman third. And mostly these guys are seamen, you know, so they recognize that well. By noon, there's a right-hand rate, and that's the Navy, below decks, left, up top. And so he was running it. And anyway, we ranked, we'd go down leisurely at 10 o'clock and drink a quart of pineapple juice and really living it up. And then they had the Battle of Tarawa. And there, they...
Now, you're already assigned to ship now at this point?
No,
Oh, okay.
we're land-based.
Oh, okay, okay.
But a little later, short after, we did stevedore work, loading equipment,
Okay.
like trucks,
Okay.
machine shops, whatever. We were aviation ordnance,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and so anyway, we get the word on Tarawa, and what happened, I guess they talked about the maneuver and strategy, and as far as I'm concerned, and I've read since then, that was all bullshit, because they absolutely sent more people in there than they could shoot. And you can imagine when you go off of LCI, then you're going to drop in the water, at least to your day. And this guy's sitting there, he's not going to miss.
Yeah.
So they took us out, and they had a Marine sergeant, and was quite a personality. He had been somewhere in an invasion, so he talked about sanitation and blah, blah, blah. So they issued us um, half of a pup tent. This guy had a shovel, this had a pick, and they, they went out and we took a hike, about 5 miles, and we weren't really that well. You lay around a couple of weeks and you lose it. So anyway, we get out there and then we go camping, and then we had to drink a slit cinch for sanitation and set up a kitchen and give us a Cracker Jacks, the sea rations. And then the next day we marched, and they flew over us, simulated aircraft attack. So I jump in the hole, and Hawaii is a big coral patch, and when I come out there, I'm bleeding everywhere. That coral is just like glass.
Right.
So anyway, and they took it out and they made squads, 3-man squads. This guy carries the machine gun, this guy carries the ammo, and this guy carries the tripod. So they tie us. You run out there, flap her down, put the gun in, flip her up, then they give us some night classes on cleaning and maintenance. And these guys could do that in there. I never did get onto it.
Well, what was the whole purpose of this exercise then?
When they end up like Kwajalein and Tarawa, they sent Navy men in.
Wow.
And we had a rifle issued, but hell, when I went ashore at Eniwetok, I had 2 bandoliers plus a belt and my rifle. I go over the side like a Marine.
Boy.
You see, they Kwajalein, then they right now, they really give it the soft. And what they, like, and we took, they had cruisers and battleships. We watched them for 3 nights, lobbing them in. During the day, they strafe it.
I heard that's an amazing sight too, to watch those big shells.
Oh, yeah. And there isn't enough projectiles that come down. Hell, we spent a week on the other side, on the ocean side, gathering up this ammunition and bombs that didn't go off. Put them on a truck and haul them out to LCI and go in the deep and roll them off.
Was there any worry? I mean, were you worried when you were doing this that
No,
this thing could go off on me?
They had bomb disposal.
Oh, okay.
They told us they were safe.
Oh, okay.
And of course, we took their word. But anyway, so we shoot the machine gun, and we had seen a movie, John Wayne, he rips that thing out of the tail gun, and here comes the Japs, and one of our guys, big strapping kid about like your size, he picks that up, and he fires it, holding on. They were air cooled,
Yeah.
so he had to hold it down, and he froze on it, and we're following him around. Talk about dummies.
Yeah.
That was quite excitement. I don't think he ever forgot that.
Well, now, were you concerned at all at this point? You'd heard about all the Tarawa and how badly that went, and they're more or less training you to go off and do the same thing. Did that get into your mind? It's like,
Yeah, in fact, they had a talk just before we got on the ship, and this officer really laid it on us. He said, "You're going to face an enemy, there's a better man than you are. And then he said it again. And he said, he'll fight you all week with a handful of rice. You're starving to death. He can throw that rifle in the dirt, pick it up, and shoot the hell out of you. And ours won't do that. They'll vilify. And he really laid it on us. He said that, God forbid that if he's a better man than you are. He's not as big as you are. He hasn't had the education, but he's a military. And I guess at that time, I think he said, in 3,000 years, the Japanese have never lost a battle.
No, geez.
So these guys were motivated. So anyway, we go on the ship, and then we went by Johnson Islands, and then we anchored a couple of days later in the bay in Eniwetok, and they just let that anchor down about 4:30, and a couple hours later, it's dark, and whoop, 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 going to be bombed. They're coming. So all the troops from down below, you're in the tropics, and crank those hatches shut in the air.
Oh, jeez.
They scare the hell out of you. But I have to go back. When we're in Pearl, I sent my class ring home. My wristwatch said, they're not going to pick anything off me.
Oh, boy.
So, anyway, we got bombed that night. They really didn't bomb us. They bombed the island, but they went right over us. I can still remember that thing hammering over us, and there wasn't just one. And apparently what they did, when we got bombed and they'd get about water level, and then the radar wouldn't pick them up until they were there. And so they had to get up, or the bomb blast will shoot them down too. And so we went to Eniwetok, and on the lagoon side, and I think we lay there 3 days, and we watched them strafe them with aircraft, and apparently there was a carrier out there somewhere, and so they sent the army in on Eniwetok, the island, the main island, and apparently they got pushed off. So they supplemented that with Marines, and then they didn't come back. They stayed there. They took it, and it was there was a blockhouse, maybe as big as this part of the house, cement, reinforced steel, and they just pounded the hell out of it. But it never did really penetrate it. Willie, give me a drink of water, please. Anyway, so we go ashore.
Now, was your responsibility, your group was, you more or less reserves then, or what was your?
I guess that as far as that, the gunnery and everything, that was in the works. But we never, when we hit the island, we, in the LCI, landing ship infantry, they come in and flash down, and we go in, Well, they had already, at that time, start unloading material. They, they, somebody messed up and had all these people coming off of these ships, and they had 50 galvanized drums with fresh water, and they couldn't find them.
So all these people are on the island with no fresh water?
So it didn't take long. They set up distilleries, and then they hung blister bags. And
So the base or the beach was pretty much secure when you guys landed, or was there still?
yeah, it was secured, but they did that pretty easy. But it wasn't really secured because Perry, which was a Jap seapay base, across from us, they at low tide you could walk over that to that other island, and then of course at night they could come back.
Oh, jeez.
But like the military, you know, you hear a lot of stories, you know, and scuttlebutt they call it, I guess, and they said that the last Jap they killed him just like a snake. They threw rocks on him, and because he was in the tree, and then so and so, and they caught him one night. This guy's lined up, and they had hot coffee, and he turned around. This guy standing behind him, but he was hungry, and that apparently was the last. And you know, if that's a true story, they told it as true, unless you were there.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So there was a cement dock on the lagoon side, but it was shelled, but it was hollow enough. Some of the guys said that's actually where he was staying. So we started then 12-hour shifts, and I guess every other day you had to do a 4-hour watch, and you had to wash your clothes and, you know, everything ship shape. And
Well, what were conditions like for you there? Were you sleeping in that pup tent then?
Yeah.
Or? Yeah.
I found a camel hair blanket, was Jap blanket, and so I put it under our pup tank, folded nicely, and put a little bit of buoyancy, and because there were still people dead there. In the tropics, they get a hell of a lot larger, you know.
Yeah.
And we'd sit there on a coconut tree, knock down, get some coffee, and they'd look, and well, there a bunch of flies in there. You'd pour it out, get some more. Pretty soon you'd blow them out, drink the coffee. And I'm gonna tell you, the Japs could have come on, and they never had any trouble because everybody had dysentery. I mean, they were sick. That we had a warrant officer that mustered us. He said, "Just a minute." He'd run for that slit, and pretty soon he'd walk. He'd shit in his pants.
Oh boy.
And we could sympathize because we were doing the same.
Oh.
So they, you know, with all this dead bodies and everything, it was terrible. I can't, you smell a dead body. That's something you'll never forget.
Oh boy.
And on the lagoon side, there were in the tide, up and down. So they dredged a hole with a front end, with a caterpillar, put them on trucks and buried them. And the Americans, they took them over to Perry, and that's where they buried them, was a military burial.
Now, what was the purpose of taking this island? What was the strategic?
Well, the grand strategy was, first of all, they had MacArthur, who was a grand showman, you know, the Navy didn't think much of him, but he was taking care of Australia and New Guinea and there. And Nimitz, who was a Navy man, ex-submariner, and they said that they preached to us that we were an unsinkable carrier. So the emphasis, they got those CBs in there. Even before we had tents to live in, they start that strip. It didn't have a strip.
Oh, okay.
And Jebi on the north end was a Jap airstrip, but it was pretty well bombed. But it was a short fighters, and so we got that. I got that blanket, and so I told Acker, I said, "You want to see some loot?" Yeah, said, flip her back, and he said, "Well, goddamn you, Stoll," he said, "I knew I smelled something. I really knew it." I said, "You don't know shit." And anyway, we went to work then and start building platforms with a CB, kind of a construction crew, and we built a foundation like wood, and then they put that squat tent up above, and it was so goddamn hot. One of those bomb disposals, he had a flare, and it had a silk parachute in it.
Mm-hmm.
So he gave us that, and I don't know, we traded him something, and we hung it in that inside, and it really helped.
So it must have been, I mean, coming from Windsor, a dry, moderate climate. Going to the tropics, that must have been quite an adjustment for you, the humidity and the heat. And
yeah, I'll tell you a story. This Kressel, there was a bohunk from Omaha, and he was a seaman in our squad. And after things kind of settled down, every squad or group had to furnish so many people for stevedore work. They were still unloading ships. And so he said, "Well, Stoll," he said, "how the hell did I get off of this detail? What did I do to you?" Well, I said, that's easy to answer. I said, "Unless we get some loot, you probably will die at that job." "Oh, that's right." About 11 o'clock next night, he comes to me. "Get out of here, I ain't got no goddamn watch." I said, "Stoll," he said, "the tide's coming in, and beer is coming in with the tide." We went like picking potatoes.
Is that right?
Well, then we dig a hole in the tent and covered up, you know, we got a little beer.
Would it cool it down at all?
No, it didn't, but we had fire extinguishers. We did a bucket in there and shoot it in there and have a cold beer.
Oh, boy.
So then, later on, he said, when that first curve there, and he said, "There's a big carton laying there," and that thing was that big, about that square. and it was full of El Producto cigars. And I think I had the Jeep, I went down and we loaded that thing up and divided. I think it was 3 of us. I think it was, as I remember, like 13 boxes of El Productos. I was smoking them maybe before breakfast, one after, and I was chewing one all day. These guys said, "Where the hell did you get?" I had a brother, he works in the pool hall. But there was always a barter, you know.
Yeah, right, yeah.
If there was any way to get ice cream mix, and then we'd go down to the officers' area and had one of the stewards made give us a sack of ice, and the other guy, whoever did salt, and then we had.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, we get on there, and then my first duty was we had a couple of F6 SPDs, and it had a line shack down there, and we maintained those planes. What happened when things quieted down, then these officers with aviation officers would come off a ship, and they had to fly so many hours for skins, in other words, of pay. And so we would ride with them. And they'd get up and we'd tool around, and once in a while they'd let you fly for a while.
Oh, is that right, yeah?
Yeah. And I was doing all right one day, and I looked down and my feet were like this. And I had the turn indicator, and then I looked out, there was a vapor tank. He said, let me do it. I was going into spin.
Oh, is that right? And you weren't aware of it?
No, well, I was trying to keep that bubble, you know, in this set. But when I did this, apparently, you don't have to move it very far when you're going a couple of 100 miles an hour.
Oh, boy.
But anyway, I flew up. I flew with a crazy so-and-so, and this guy is doing maneuvers. Emma ones yet, you know. You go like this, and then you flip her over. And when you come out of that, you can't even raise your arms.
Yeah, right.
And I had my camera, and I'm looking up, that camera's up here, you know. So after about 10 minutes of that, you know, he's going, wee! We have radio contact. And so I swing that turret around, flip that ammo box over, and we had sauerkraut and sausage for lunch. And I didn't feel it, but and then of course everybody come down and look on the deck. Said, "Did you get sick, Stoll? We were watching you up there." Nah, hell no. And then later on, I go down there and clean up.
As you guys were on there longer, did conditions start to get better as far as living conditions and food and such?
We got pretty civilized, and they built a little chapel. We'd go to church, and then I had duty with the crash crew, and we had a kind of a half building there beyond the radio the tower, and they were bombing Truk, which was the Gibraltar of the Pacific, and apparently they never wanted to invade that. They wanted to neutralize it. which they did, and they absolutely sunk more shipping tonnage than they did at Pearl Harbor.
Oh, really?
It was really well fortified. See, Eniwetok was mandated to the Japanese after the First World War, and they were copra plantations, and the Germans would take the meat out of that coconut, ship it back to Germany, and make munitions out of it, alcohol or whatever. And so when you fly over some of those islands, it was typical German in that it was row on row, and you look this way, and there were some Melanesians on the island, but it didn't take long. Chaplain got them out of there. Some of them had shown a little bit of Oriental. See, they had probably was mandated after the First World War, and so we didn't. Some of the fellas, the chaplain would go over with supplies and stuff like that. They'd go with the chaplain if they had a day off or something, and so we survived that terrible thing that happened one day when 25 came in from a truck, and apparently took a hit, and it had a turret right after the wings, and the shot hit the gunner, and when we flipped that hatch out, here comes his entrails, and that whole plane was red on the back. This poor guy bled to death.
Oh, boy.
And I guess from where he looked, we let him down, and they had the crash truck there, and they put him on, and he was dead when he got it, but they get hydraulic shot out, and they'd come in and way out there and come in, you know, and he's Tars talking to him, and he's coming in, and the minute he hits that way, she starts cartwheeling, and we run out there and try to pull it off. We never lost a plane that way. We had bean nozzles, carried, I think, about 1,000 gallons of water, which never really went, but they'd run a pump in the lagoon and start stringing lines to that vehicle, and we put them out. They one day was just about dark, and a B-25 came in. A B-17 came in, and he ran her all the way. They stopped him just before he dropped off on the ocean.
Was it built to land a B-17?
No, it wasn't enough real estate.
Yeah.
The guy did a hell of a job. I don't know what his problem was, but we had an area. They called it a $1 million beach. They would run Truck or Wake Island or Bucci or some of the. I don't think they could get to Saipan, but anyway, they would take off at night. It was they had such a load with fuel and ammo that during the day they couldn't take off. So one night, we just must have been 40 fighters came in from a carrier, I guess, landed there, and they had them all lined up. This guy veered and he ran into those planes. I'm running down the strip, and I looked out, I'm naked. So I had to go back and get, but those planes, that aluminum was just like wax. See, they're full of 100 octane.
Right, right.
And it just, every tent there was a guy that knew what to do, was mechanic. We'd steal the clock out of him. Had pretty good clocks. So that went on and on. And we had a Lieutenant Scrigley, and apparently he was grounded from a aircraft carrier, some infraction, and he was short-based. And then, of course, he was mad at everybody. So we mustered the fellas and for a guard duty, and he overheard a steward's mate, and they never really come down there. And he said, Stoll, he said, arrest that man. And I said, sir, I said, what's going on? He said, you heard me, arrest that man and bring him in here. So I took my arm and I said, come on. This Negro was standing there, and he said, sir, I'll let you know when no, sir, he said, I have a problem. He said, I told you to stand at attention. And he said, I have to urinate. And he said, God damn it, I want you to stand at attention. So the Negro stand there and piss in his pants. We had those highway marine shoes, and they would cut them like that, and they'd cut all their uniforms. A Negro can't, in those days, they couldn't wear a uniform. They had to decorate it some way.
Oh, is that right?
So he said, finally said, at ease. And so the guy slips his finger, holds it up, dumps it on the barracks floor. But this guy, when he got transferred, so he come down to the fireman's shack, and of course we knew it, the grapevine. Shriggley's leaving, good for him. And everybody turned our back on him. He wanted to say goodbye, and they said, goodbye, you asshole.
Huh. Huh. So you had Negroes on the island.
Well, there were stewards' mates.
Oh, okay. And were they always segregated from you guys?
Well,
the army,
they were segregated in that they didn't have any gun duty. Whether they had guard duty or anything, I don't know. We weren't. They had a officer club on the end of the island, and the Red Cross had come in. They'd spend up down there. If we wanted to, my buddy Huska was from another outfit, but we got together. We'd go fishing. Well, they had to go down and look at from a distance, see to it, and get a hold of that Red Cross man and beg him to let us have a couple of rods. And since that, and it's been 60 years or so, I don't have much use for Red Cross.
Yeah.
And it's probably not fair on my part, because that was an individual. But he knew where the good life was. We never saw him. We heard he was there.
So what would you guys have on your side of the island as far as, did you have a club of any sort, or what would you guys do for entertainment on your time off to kill the time?
They had, pardon me, they had they got some baseballs, they had softball teams. One time they had a bunch of, maybe a half dozen cartons came in and they were bicycles, so we'd ride bicycles. But normally, you really didn't have much time. We had movies, and you'd get there about dark, and palm trees, buried in the saddle. It was kind of like a regular. Had a projection room out there. Let the curtain down. We'd see movies. And that went on, say maybe, 3 months. Pretty soon no movies. Well, the scuttlebutt was, you couldn't gripe too much. Those Japs were sitting out there in the subs and counting the planes, and they knew how long it'd take to get the truck or Wake or wherever. And so they'd alert them and they'd be ready to shoot the hell out of them when they got there. Otherwise, they had to, if they had fighters, they had to go in the air. Well, they can't stay up there either.
Yeah.
So then no movies. I was telling Willie and the girls the other day about Jack Benny came, USO.
Oh, is that right?
And a little island like that, And he had, what was the other guy's, Jerry Colonna. He had the mustache. And I stood out there, here they come. Well, they had to circle it, I guess, about at least an hour. The plane was coming in and was all shot up. So they had to make way, stay out of there until they got down. And so when Jerry Colonna, I had a mustache, and when he went by and he looked at me, had competition, you see. And they put on quite a show.
You were there, yeah.
It had a bunch of dancing girls, and I forget that one of their area's singers, I can't remember her name. She was quite a singer.
Well, it must have just been wonderful to see women. It was probably just an island of men, wasn't it?
Hell no, we hadn't seen women since Pearl Harbor. And we just, there's a regulation in the Navy, I think, if any ship or station, after 18 months, you could ask for a transfer. Well, there had to be a vacancy, of course, and so we'd go down there and sign up, Never got to leave. When we were in Norfolk, I signed up for cadet training with another fellow, White, and he was called from Eniwetok, and he went to flight school.
Huh.
Then I was next, but it never happened.
Huh.
And when the Japs quit, then that was a whole new world. They start spending money again. Before, no problem. So it was, when we first were there, we were working 12-hour days, and every other night we had a 4-hour watch. And I used to tell the fellas, I said, I was born in Windsor, and across the road is a lake, all the goddamn soft water we could ever want. And I said, in addition to that, I'll have my dad wake me every night at 12 o'clock, and I'll just roll over and go back to sleep. But we got along, and then we say we would put in 8 hours, and your laundry would pick up and pile up, and this was neglected. You just weren't organized.
Yeah, yeah.
We had one time, we got some potatoes, and so we get a wire and rig a quart can of oil, I guess it was butter, sliced it, put the blowtorch on it, and had French fries.
Jeez.
When we got to Pearl, we drank milk. We hadn't had any milk.
I was going to ask you, did you have any cravings? Was there
Oh,
one thing that
yeah.
you were looking forward to getting back to?
You know, we had a beer garden, and they'd give you 2 chits. You got two beers, and usually they were cold,
Yeah.
and it was really a treat. Some of the guys, of course, bootlegged them. They sold there. They didn't like beer or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And one time we were sitting around, they had some benches there, and here comes our little dog, our mascot, and he's carrying a leg bone with a shoe on it, and our beer garden rides right over the Jap burial.
Oh, be darned. Oh.
Just he had to catch him, and he threw it away.
So how long were you then on the island then, altogether?
About 2 years.
2 years. Any chance for R&R to get off and go somewhere else, or you were on that for 2 years?
There, yeah. You had to crash crew, or, you know, they apparently didn't have enough manpower to, you know, you could get a day off or trade somebody a day off and go fishing, but there was, with Mark, we had a beer garden, and of course when they got about so low on their supplies, that cut their enlisted men off, you know, which kind of rankled me. Those other guys down there with the shiny caps, they were still in beer. And it was always, you know, it was just as hot for me as it was for him. And I think they could have maybe put their arm around us a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
But we never got that. I've always said that the problem with most of those officers was they were like we knew airplane engines, but they knew their specialty. This one guy was a executive officer. I think he was a lieutenant commander, and he was a shoe salesman. That's what they said. Here comes old shoes. You know, but he was ROTC, or he had earned that, but he wasn't qualified to handle people. They would. There was no sense in talking to them.
Was it hard to respect somebody like that and
Yeah.
take orders from somebody like that?
That's right.
Yeah, but you had to.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
You knew that.
Yeah.
They'd throw you in the brig. And I had our guard duty one time at the brig, and this young fella's in there, and it had little bars in it. And so, bread and water. And he said, Stoll, you know, God damn it, I'm hungry. He said, can't you get me something? I said, I can, but I won't tell you I'm not going to do that. Because if they catch me, I'll do your time plus mine.
Yeah. Right. Wow.
I had guard duty at Norman one Sunday morning. They had those guys wearing shackles, goddamn ball. on the chain, and they give us a rifle with a bayonet on it. He said, if he gets away, you're gonna do his time, plus whatever the captain gives you. And I said, you know, I can't run that fast. What'll I do, stab him? He said, just don't let him get away. Well, they had kind of a area there. Those guys they looked mean, you know. God, you couldn't wait to get over 4-hour guard duty.
Oh boy, oh boy.
And the thing you had to learn, at least aviation machinists made, there was 3 ways to do it. There was the right way, the wrong way, and the Navy way. And those others were all wrong. Because there's the reg, you know.
Yeah. How was communications back and forth from where you're at, say, to your folks back home? Was that pretty
Well,
good, or?
They censored us,
Yeah.
and folks didn't know where I was at until they finally lifted the censor. And then this is another thing that those officers really kind of looked at your personality by the letters you wrote.
Right. Did your folks, probably particularly your mom, ever talk about, once she got home after the war, what she was going through, what she was thinking? No, she hadn't heard from you, didn't know where you were at.
She said, I prayed a lot for you.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was, you know, those the Wolf's family and any number of those families over there, they had a lot of boys. Some of those people had 3 boys in the service. And invariably, one of them got killed.
Wow.
It just blows your mind.
Yeah.
But, you know what, you guys used to say a little bit, I'm all right, you know. We had a guy by the name of Bones, and he had been, I think, coagulated. They shipped him to Eniwetok, I don't know, as a replacement or something. And he didn't want to go home. And this was all an act. You know, you got Chance Bone to go home. Said, hell, I like it here. They finally shipped him over. But that was his psychology.
Huh.
He had tried everything else.
During that period of time when you were on the island, did you ever run into anybody from home, or anybody?
Yeah, twice. I'll show you a picture of that. When I got to Eva, Hawaii, in that area was a fella by the name of Jacoby, and they were the neighbors across the street from us in Windsor. He was older, and he was running a ambulance service. They'd fly those airmen, and they'd land in the coconut grove or somewhere. They'd go out and get them, and so he cons the chaplain off the ship and going to see his cousin. And he said, hi, cousin. Yeah. And then one of the fellas that was my very good friend, he was on a repair ship. And he was out there, and I knew that he was on the ship, and I went out on a mailboat. And we were just talking about after that trip. He said, hell, he took 3 showers, and he ate geedunks all the time. You know, geedunks is ice cream. They had fresh water.
Wow.
We were like natives.
Oh boy.
We dug a hole to shower, you know, and the CBs and those Navy guys are pretty handy. If they didn't have it, they'd steal it. And so it put a tower up there and dug this hole. And that sand just keep coming in. Well, it finally hit the water. And it wasn't quite as salty as the ocean, but still brackish.
Oh, jeez.
And you know, they called it a non-castile soap they issued us. And if you ever washed your hair with that, it would stand up like a ubangi. You couldn't comb it. It just wasn't, it just wouldn't tolerate that. Well, we had a fella in our outfit who was a motorman, and we'd pay him $20 a month, and we had those 5-gallon gas cans. He'd give us a couple every week, and we didn't even have to watch. You'd kick him, and well, he's here again. We had the bottom of a 5-gallon bundle with a bung in it from a canteen of blown holes, you know, and fill her and rub her up and get under, soap up, and about that time it run out.
Jeez. So were you there when the war ended then? Is that,
Yeah.
okay. You remember where you were when you'd heard that we'd dropped the atom bomb?
Well, it was night when we heard, and of course the ships were all shooting flares, and some of them were shooting guns, and everybody was trying to make noise. We had one kid, I think his name was Self. He ran out there and picked up one of those flares, and the goddamn thing explodes on him and killed him.
Oh, boy.
Jesus Christ. But, you know, there was, like Wilson, he was married. Man, that guy just, he was so happy. He wanted to shake everybody. I'm going home.
Could you imagine what, when they said they dropped this big bomb, could you have any idea what this thing was about and what?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, the first one, they didn't surrender. And luckily we had another one. And that was the greatest thing that saved so many lives.
Well, that's always a question I like to ask too, because there's always been somewhat of a controversy whether we should have dropped it or not. But and your thoughts on that?
Well, you have to have a vision of an invasion, and that would have been a hell of a lot worse than anything you could ever imagine. You know, like some of those islands, those guys had tunnels and everything. So then we'll fight them at night. We'll shoot flares. The guys just go in their hole. You know, like Eniwetok. God damn it, there was that much dust on that thing. They had hammered the hell out of it. And the first group out there, they just killed the hell out of them. They pushed them off. Yeah. And they said that there's, you know, they said, well, what do we do? Well, they said, just hold the position you got. Well, then they'd shoot those flares off, and they'd see those Japs going into their holes. Apparently, we went over to Perry one day, a bunch of us guys, and walking along the beach, and that apparently was a kind of a cement ramp for seaplanes to pull them up. And so here's a Jap mess kit, a pretty long bale, and it had been squeezed shut. And so I picked it up, and sand ran out, I threw it over my back. And when that thing hit, I knew what I did. Old actor, he picked it up and he heard it clank.
Oh, jeez.
And apparently what happened was that chap he had been in Singapore or whatever. He had a collection of silver dollars, not American dollars, like occupation from Okinawa or Singapore or whatever. And I said, well, after one thing about it, well, it's 50-50. No, he said, when I heard that thing clank, you had already lost it. He wouldn't give me it. And it had a picture of his wife, just a little picture, and then it showed him. He had their sword and was standing there. God, I would give him, he had a little locket with hair in it, apparently his wife. What a find.
Yeah, I'll be darned.
I had a little coconut like that, and they had carved it, so and then the strings. Apparently he put his whatever hung it up. Well, you pull it out. Then I had some ivory chopsticks and some other things. So we're in a tent. We're going to move all of stuff out and put oil on or something on the floorboards in the tent. So I took my glasses off and put this stuff on my bunk. It was a folding cot. Went to lunch. When I come back, it was gone.
Oh. Japan has surrendered. What was your next move then? How much longer were you on the island? What was your next move from there then?
Well, we were all, senior there. They had emptied the brigs on the west coast, and they'd sent them to the island as punishment, for Christ's sake, and we were 2 years as punishment. When these guys, the first thing I go down there to the shack and a crash crew, they got a Bunsen burner and or something, and they're distilling medical alcohol. When that thing gets out, you're next. And a bunch of rummies, Well, so we were there to kind of orientate those guys and run the equipment. And then we draw straws, and the short straws get to leave first.
Oh, so you weren't, the point system or nothing didn't play into that?
No, that didn't.
Oh, okay.
So I'm one of the lucky ones. See you, Magrino, you so and so, and glad to be rid of you. We were like brothers.
Yeah.
And so they put us on a barge out there. It was strictly living quarters, just like a ship, with the racks and everything. And finally they put us on a Dutch merchantman, the Palua. Apparently it was quite a ship in its day, and they had so many people on there that they'd start the movie on the fantail just as dark, and they'd take that reel, put it on the other end. If you missed anything, you'd run. And so, of course, by then, a little different attitude. Your rate kind of helped you out. So they fed us standing up and this stuff is sliding on the deck. It wasn't, and hotter than hell. And the reason it was hot, this ship was under tow with a seagoing tug. We thought there, which way are we going now? And apparently what happened, this is scuttlebutt again, probably was true, when they knew they were going to go to Japan, somebody threw a wrench in the machinery.
Oh, is that right?
And so now they can't go. And we rode that damn thing to Pearl Harbor. And when we got there, they literally tore that town apart. One guy walked off a dry dock and was killed, and on and on, you know. We went downtown to drink, to do some drinking.
Yeah,
And,
what was it like? Now you're back in civilization.
Yeah,
So,
we were drinking milk and eggs. We had eggs like that, powdered eggs, and always about an inch and a half of that was black. So we had, you know, all this fresh. When we finally went out, there's Diamond Head, and I said, fellas, there goes the pineapple juice. And goddamn, I tell you, from then on we had pineapple juice on everything. I can't eat it today.
is that right?
Willie told me at that time you couldn't buy any
Yeah,
for any price.
right, yeah.
But anyway, we were there. I don't remember what ship we went on. They pulled into Pearl Harbor, and they tied her down, and this ship, you know, going up and down, and this kid jumps over the side and breaks his leg on a davit. And so, you know, there he goes in the ambulance. So we weren't there very long. We went to Pearl Harbor, and then we went to Camp Shoemaker, which was the outgoing unit, you know, for discharge. And I had been in the...
That's in California, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had been in the Navy 3 years, never had a leave. Never had a leave. This whiney, I'd read the local paper, they said, he's back on leave again. Harlan's back there. I never got to... You see, what happened to us about the time we got out of machinist mate school, and they had the Battle of Coral Sea, and they lost a hell of a lot of gunners. So everybody went to gunner school. Well, by then the vacuum was over, and of course at that time the life expectancy of a gunner was in combat 21 seconds, you know. So I guess I was blind when I always tell the story. When I went to the VA, and old doctor, he said, Stoll, he said, how the hell did you get in the Navy? Well, I said, I joined up, volunteered. No, he said, he said, you've got perforated eardrums. And then he went on to tell me that that was the reason that Frank Sinatra wasn't drafted. You know, he was of that age. And I said, well, they took me because I couldn't sing. So we went to Shoemaker, and the little skinny old, well, what the hell was it? He was was an accountant or bookkeeper. He come by and he said, Stoll, he said, they got you lined up for a Shangri-La cruise. And I said, what the hell are you talking? I just came from there. They put those guys in shipping to Japan. I said, hell, I haven't had to leave. He said, get your goddamn crew sack ready, your sea bag, and he said, they'll be calling you.
So you were going back over as the occupation force?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
I mean, the problem was they couldn't find my blue jacket. They couldn't find my records. So I said, you gotta save me. I'll jump over the side before they ever take me back. He said, well, I'll try. And by God, he stayed up all night and he found it. And that, of course, verified that I had the points and everything else.
Oh, wow.
Talk about some excitement.
Oh,
I couldn't
man.
sleep either. Yeah, he said, Shangri-La, your ass. It was quite an adventure, I'll tell you that. We had guys killed, and there was something happened they had some large tanks with 100 octane. It was a fuel dump on the cashew side on that. And somewhere or another, that thing took off. And it blew so hard in our area, in their tent, we had a piece of coral about that big. Well, goddamn, if you'd have been there, you'd have had it, You just...
Wow. Wow.
We had skins. We divided. I got half, and that was, you got flight time pay. I think it was. I was a second class, and I got, I think, 5% war zone, and then half skins. In several months there, I made $159 a month.
How would that translate today? I mean, was that a good salary, a poor salary? How would that something like?
That was just pretty poor, because you had to maintain they issued your inventory, your clothes, and then from then on you had to buy it.
Oh, so you couldn't sock that money away.
Oh, I stayed at home.
But you still needed money to spend on the island.
Yeah, you want to gamble or?
Oh, okay.
Or we had one guy from Omaha, a little older, and payday, and he had the biggest damn poker game, and I guess he worked at the stockyards in Omaha, and he was a real slicker. I used to tell him, I'm watching you old son of a bitch, you're taking all the seaman's money. He said, no, they lose it.
Huh.
At this Pizzo kid from Montana, he was an art, and I made this mistake of lending him money. He waked me up, said, Stoll, I got a hot streak, give me 20. I like him. And goddamn, every time I turn around, he needs a 20. I'll pay it back. And pretty soon I said, wait a minute, there's got to be another program. So he paid me, and a couple of days later I said, Pizzo, it said, what the hell do you think you're doing? What do you mean? Well, he said, you're going to pay me. Well, he said, I did. I said, the hell you did. I said, well, that's the kind of guy you are. You paid me, that's good enough for me. You didn't, but man, he tried to put it in my pocket. He never bothered me again.
Did you ever, since you hadn't taken a leave, did they give you accumulated leave at the end, or how did
Yeah.
that work out?
Yeah, they paid me for it.
Okay, so it all washed out in the end for you?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
told my dad, I think they finally sent it to me, and I think it was about $1,500. And he said, boy, he said, you ought to go in there and do it again.
No way. Huh? So how much longer at Shoemaker? You were discharged at Shoemaker, or
Yeah.
how much? And then did you head back home for Windsor, or
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
you?
And I got off the train in Cheyenne, and no, I guess I did have leave. I did, because my folks were there in Cheyenne. No, I guess that's when we were going out.
Head.
And they were in Cheyenne, and I visited with him. And I looked over there, and there's the caboose of the train.
Oh, jeez.
God damn, you know, I'm AOL. I ain't got no papers on me. So I run over there and talked to the guy, and he said, well, you probably catch him in Green River. But I said, well, I'm having a ticket. He said, get on that train, and when it stops, talk to conductor, and he'll help you find that. He can find out that train, and chances are you can make it. And goddamn, I did.
Oh boy.
And I walked in there, and that chief said, "Oh Jesus Christ!" He said, "Stoll, I was worried. I knew a lot of guys in my time, but I never thought you'd go AOL."
Oh boy.
Because he knew my parents were going to be there.
Uh,
This is when you were leaving. right?
Yeah, that's when I was leaving.
and then when you came back to Cheyenne, to the train, and they met you there, or
Yeah.
and brought you back home.
No, I think I got off at Greeley,
Oh, okay.
and then I hitchhiked. I guess a lot of I didn't have my sea bag with me. I was just a little duffel, because I had shipped it, and I had a parachute bag, and maybe it came later too. So I hitchhiked. Said, where are you going? I said, Windsor, get in. So I get in. He holds me to the Y there, where the dairy is.
Uh-huh.
He dumps me off. It's Sunday morning, I'm standing there. So anyway,
Were you able to? Did your folks know you were coming home? Had you
No,
been?
they
Yeah.
didn't.
Okay. Right.
so I finally got home, and I was kind of, I shouldn't say this, I guess I was kind of waiting for a little home cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll bet.
And Mom was going to have me take me out to lunch. So it worked out all right.
I'll bet it was nice to be home after
Oh,
what you'd been
man,
through.
it's-
Yeah.
I tell you, it was something. And of course, I should have gone on to school, but I just decided, my dad had written me one time a letter, and he said, your brother Harold is here, and if you'll promise to come back. I'm tired of this, I can't hire any help, and I've made enough, I bought a couple of farms, and he said, if you'll promise to come home, we'll make a partnership, and we'll use my money, and you boys can take it over. Well, so I told him, I said, figure on that. So there was still some chance to take some courses, say CSU, but I didn't do that. And about the time we were getting to kind of sit down and see how this thing with Colorado Milling Elver took it over. And my dad was out of a job, and Harold was manager and I was his foreman. We started a feed business. And my dad retired when he was 56,
Is that right?
and he died when he was 99.
Is that right?
And I want to tell you, I took him one time up to Horsetooth, so it was Mother's Day or something. He said, "You speed up the cook a little bit, you and I will go fishing." So I'm up there sitting in the sun with this old man. And Hadman Moll, he said, "Give me a cigarette." He didn't smoke, but he was being a butt. He'd spit there like a pigeon been there. But he said, "You know, Ronnie," he said, "you know what the guy told me one time?" "No," I said, "I don't." "Well," he told me, he said, "Pete, if you go fishing for every day you go fishing, then you'll live a day longer." And I said, "Well, Dad, you really believe that?" Well, he said, "I really do."
So you finished out the career, you ran that feedlot then, or?
Well, we ran that mill,
No, uh-huh.
and I think I was there about 9 years. But meantime, I got married. We had a little girl, and they transferred to Longmont and as manager. And I was there about 3 years, I guess, Willie, and they appointed me assistant district manager. We had 23 country elevators, so I was going to charge accounts receivable with my experience, like maintenance, repair, and insurance. You know, the insurance, most of the elevators or feed mills, they never wear them out, they burn down pretty regularly.
Right.
So it's a continual maintenance problem or plant improvement to be better serve the customers of the area. And then we were in poultry and hogs and cattle, and so we had to kind of, we hired a fellow that was a director of sales who knew nutrition, and we were a force in Colorado. We had a plant in Grand Junction and one at Montrose, and then later on we bought the elevator at Monte Vista.
All of which you were responsible for?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
So we, apparently what happened, I took that plant over in Longmont. The manager had taken a job as a water commissioner in Boulder County or something, and so his assistant was appointed the manager, and it hadn't been maybe a month or two. The manager, the district manager, lived in Longmont, so he's come there Saturday morning. Walt, he said, "Walt, you know, how's it going?" "Well," he said, "Can I talk to you a little bit?" And he said, "Yeah." And he goes in his office, kicks the door shut. He said, "I want to tell you something. If I'm going to do Leonard's job, I want Leonard's pay." And he said, "Well, you know, unfortunately, that's not a problem because as of now you're canned, and furthermore, you hadn't showed me that you could do Leonard's job. What the hell are you talking about?" So it's Saturday night, they called Harold, who was manager of plant, and he said, "Tell that Ralph to be down there at 8 o'clock in the morning." Monday,
Huh.
and well, that was about the best thing that ever happened to William and I, because at that point, my brother Harold and I, we weren't getting along that well. And it was hard on me, and I guarantee it was harder on me, you know. In fact, I talked to my dad, I said, why don't you let me farm one of those farms? He had me one time. I went to the hospital with an ulcer. But anyway, it worked out, and I learned a lot from him. And so when I got to Longmont, they had accounts receivable, $67,000 was on the books, and 3/4 of it was over 60 days, and our terms were 10, on or before 10th, 30 days. So, and it lost, that time it was down, it was losing $16,000 as an operation. And so a year or two later, this district manager came down, you know, one Friday, and he was going to Esther Park, and he said, Ralph, he said, I'd hate to owe you any money. And I said, you got that right. I've heard every goddamn story that ever was thought of. I went on to the south of Longmont one time. This guy knew me. He was plowing. That asshole wouldn't stop. I finally walked over about 40 acres of plowed ground. And the result was this guy said you can't take the blood out of a turnip stone. And I said, you're looking at the guy that's going to try. And about that time I looked, he was big enough he'd have whipped the crap out of me. But he paid.
Huh.
In this one Schlegel, he said, Ralph, he said, Leonard never come out here and bothered us. And he said, you were just here last month. Well, I said, there's two things wrong with that. I said, Leonard, maybe that's why he's not here. And secondly, I'm here because you haven't paid your bill. He said, Mom, write him a check. And I thought I'd lost the business, you know. But he knew I was taking care of him.
Right.
But, you know, that's the thing. I shudder when I think about it. We had a red-headed SOB in Denver who was he was the credit manager for Colorado Milling and Elevator. At that time, they had about 4 flour mills and all these 105 elevators from Idaho to Chickasha, Oklahoma. And when he gave a talk at a manager's annual meeting, that George Grimes, he went, there goes Scrooge. But he had a hell of a job too, because several times, I guess he actually saved the company a hell of a lot of money. He had his sources, you know, and he knew when to cut them off.
So did you finish out your career with this company then?
No.
Or? Yeah.
And what happened, we had a fella from the southern Colorado, an old time, what was it, the Hardware, or who bought CM&E?
Bill White, wasn't it, or was
Yeah.
that his name?
Bill White. He represented a family in the San Luis Valley. And
I think they were.
they bought the
they
Great
were
Western.
Maytag, it had something to do with the Maytag family.
Yeah.
They were very wealthy.
They bought Great Western, and I asked Carol at the meeting, I said, what do you think of that? And he said, well, that's like CM&E trying to buy a Ford Motor Company. It was, but what happened is CM&E, bunch of old timers, hard rock miners like, and they operated, I think, for 42 days, that whole goddamn and they didn't have to borrow any money. And these guys got onto that, and they milked it.
Hmm.
Well, then he started selling stuff. He was on board, and they had these people on it, and he just run it the way he wanted. So, I was still in Denver, and so I was going to be 3rd of July, or 3 days before the 1st of July, I was going to be terminated. And the manager and I were talking, and he knew a fella that would buy that elevator line. And by the time he got all the ducks in line and gave him the figures, the fella up and dies. So that never happened. And they sent me to Denver, to Fort Collins, made me assistant to Harold Johnson. They kept selling those elevators. We sold Frederick, Loveland, Johnston, Windsor, Monte Vista, on and on. And so I was assistant manager with Harold Johnson, and they had a fire at Johnstown. So Harold Johnson and I and Ed Spring, who was the manager at Johnstown, we took out a small business loans, and we bought that. It had a fire, we rebuilt it, and we also bought mead. And we took the rollers out and a lot of the equipment, put them in the rebuilt Johnstown. And we got a bunch of rich ranchers out of Wyoming. They bought Ranchway, and we paid a company. And so I was assistant manager, Harold Johnson. But we made a mistake now that I see. These guys, these ranchers, they bought a bank at Lusk, and they're in and out, in and out. And if we made a profit, and we usually did, they wanted 17 cents on the dollar or whatever. They wanted to milk it. And so the manager, one of the board members, Bixler, he was playing around, and his wife got onto that and started divorce proceedings. And I guess his money came from her dad and mother at the Two Crow Ranch up in Lusk. They used that on their statement. And so they actually eased us out, got another manager. and he didn't know what the hell he was doing. He damn near lost the whole thing. Because when Harold and I took it over, our profit was 3.5 million. No, that was a level of business. When we left, it was 13 million. So we did the job. Then I went to work for a national feed company out of Miami, and I transferred, and they were building a mill in Port Harcourt in Nigeria, and so they got a contract from the Nigerian government. They had purchased, at that time, they had an ex-school teacher was a president of Nigeria, the only democratic government in the whole of Africa. Well, he didn't last too long, and but they had contracted with a Danish firm to build little mills, like say in Severance, and they wanted equipment to hammer mills, this and that, and storage bins for cooperative in that area. It sells stock in it. And at that time, the big deal was chickens, because they were probably more efficient. They'd eat a pound of feed and just about 3/4 pound of meat, and then they were short of meat. And so I went up, and I had a fellow from Guyana and a fellow from Birmingham. The three of us flew over, and then we met
to Nigeria?
Yeah, we met with the cooperative manager in Lagos, which at that time was the capital. And then we went to one of the feed mills with one of the fellows from our company was over there, and how we would approach it and questions we'd answer, and to make a survey. Well, apparently what happened, the Nigerians contracted for this feed mills, and they had like 13 of them sold, more or less, and they're building them with the Nigerians, cement floors, and put the bins up, little hammer mill. Well, it was flawed. It didn't have any magnets in it. It didn't have any place to clean the grain and take the trap iron out. And one of the mills, when the guy got there, the miller got there, they had it in a gunny cycle going to town to get it welded back together for the second time. And I said, I could have told them right away that isn't going to work. But anyway, the Nigerians went back for holiday, and then they never came back.
Huh.
They weren't paying them. Normally it's so much earnest money, so much half, and then completion, the third, and that's, and your word is your bond, or your bank has signed in on it, and so I never got them to tell me why, but I think there was one. Miller, he had the north part of Nigeria, and Nigeria at that time was about the size of Montana, crawling with people. Never saw so many niggers in your life, but anyway, they're Christian, and then they were a British Crown colony. They finally backed out of that and had to up at Joss, they had a tin mine, and those people, those English just milked them. We had any number of them here at CSU. Willeen worked there, and these guys, the little village would get all the money. This guy's showed some promise, he'd send them over here and get a veterinarian license or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the trouble with it, then he didn't go back. You know, he was going to go back to the mud hut.
Yeah.
So anyway, they had this, had Miller up north, I had the middle, and then the guy from Guyana had the seacoast. Well, Miller was so far north that he was just about in the Sahel or near the desert. And they told us, number one, don't be on the road in Narc because of pirates. And they're still talking English.
Yeah.
And then if you run into a camel and he sets back on your car, he'll squash and kill you. So that's what he was suffering. So one of my mills, these poor Nigerians, they would stop and they'd tell him, well, they got 49 different languages. So between the chauffeur and my technician, who was an electrician, young man, between the two of them, he could figure out what he was talking. Well, then he'd go like that, and then he'd go like this. So we'd take off and...
Now, were you stationed over there, or,
yeah,
permanently over there, or just?
No, I was just doing this job.
Oh, okay.
I was going to be longer there, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Anyway, I said, you know, stop, God damn it. What's the matter? And I said, there's the guy that we just talked to. So he did find us another dummy.
Oh,
Well,
boy.
it's 3:30. We gotta get under. So we'd go to a hell of a big motel, squash courts, swimming pool, and everything. No water. What happened, apparently, it was that the Nigerians normally had given the electrical people at the generator a Christmas bonus. That year they didn't get any. So occasionally they'd shut it off, like for 3 days. But anyway, one of them, I forget what little town, there was a girls' school of sewing or something, and we looking around, we find that mill, it's still in the cartons, and the jungle is growing through it.
Jeez. Huh.
And this county agent, you know, he's sitting in their little cubbyhole with his air conditioner on, and the truck tires are all stacked up because if he parks it, they'll steal him. And we had collectively, we said that the best thing that happened to Nigeria, of course, was if the English would come back. They had after the English given back, they had the war of Biafra. They killed about 1 million Nigerians. The houseboy in our compound in Port Harcourt he was, his name was Friday, and that's all he knew. He didn't know whether Friday, where his parents was, but he kind of took a shine to me because he thought I was going to stay, and I'd dash him a little. And that's the way every transaction over there, you had to bribe him. In fact, he'd ask you, "You dash me?" So Friday was in the, I said, "You were in the war?" "Oh, yes, yeah." I said, "What did you do?" And he said, "I was an ammunition carrier." Well, I said, "Where were you when the war ended?" And he said, "I was in Joss, and that's way up north." I said, "Well, how did you get home?" And he said, "Well, I got home just like I got up there. I walked." And I said, "Well, how did you live, you know?" "Well," he said, "I sold my clothes for something to eat."
I'll be darned. So where did you go then after the Nigerian job?
Well, I went back to the States. We had an office there. They had a Negro girl secretary, and she could talk English. And I had to make a report. These other guys, they wanted to print a report, bound, and give it to the Nigerian government so we get our money. And I spent about 3 days with her, and I'd make a mistake, and then she'd make a mistake, and and then she'd just about get to the bottom, and then she'd make another mistake, and I said, "Hell, my secretary in Miami, will do that whole damn thing in a half a day, and it'll be correct." She said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to go back to Miami," which I did.
Yeah.
I picked up his papers, mine, went back. Then they were going to send me back and take care of the mill they were building. And so Willie stored all the furniture, and she was going to go with me, I guess, and the girls too, wasn't it? No?
We were both married,
Yeah, I guess so. But anyway,
but we were going over for 2 years.
I had signed a contract, and something happened there, and so we really had to go.
Coup in
Yeah.
labor, yeah.
Yeah, they got rid of that.
Right about the time we came home to get shots and so
Hmm.
we could go back over. And in the meantime, we had this coup and the company just decided we're not going into that mess. Tore everything out and we never got to go.
And is that towards the tail end of your career then? And then yeah.
I went to work for Wiggins, and they had line elevators, but he was no good, and I could see that he was cooking the books, and I didn't want to violate any bond, and
Yeah.
so that worked. And then I volunteered to go to Russia, work with a flour mill, and I did. I went over to Moscow and flew to, what is it, Willie? Saratov, and they picked me up with a young lady who was my interpreter. And
Was that anywhere near where your relatives migrated from?
yeah,
Oh.
on Sunday, they took me to Deinhof.
Where his parents?
It was where my parents, both of them, came from,
Oh, wow.
So when we parked there, it was kind of town hall was on a Sunday, and this Russian flour miller, he went in and he come out with a guy who was a German Russian, and he could talk, I could talk German to him. And he could talk Russian to them, and then this interpreter talked to English to me.
Yeah, okay, so you had all the bases covered.
Apparently what happened, it was a sad day for me, because I want to tell you, understand that I had gone halfway around the world to get there, and the German told me he wasn't born in that area, and he made, you know, the one for schlepped, the people that Stalin put them all to Siberia. And I said, well, were you in the army? No, he said, I was only 7 years old. So he came back, and he told me, he said there were two old ladies in, you know, one I've died a year ago, and the other one just died. They were the only two ladies that were born and raised that he knew of. That town was apparently about 9,000 population when my father left there as a 19-year-old boy. And so we went to the cemetery. What was a plowed field over here was the old cemetery where our people was. They had knocked it all down and plowed it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I took a plastic bag of dirt from the cemetery, and we went to this fellow's house. Well, then we went out to the cemetery, and the little gate there, and he had like a piece of cloth, so the stock didn't get in it, I guess. And he told them that there's a daughter that died, and she was in the stream and drowned. And he said it cost so much money to bury someone in Saratov that they shipped them to a little village like that. And he said that the one German lady, they had a little religious cemetery service. And when the other one died, he said there weren't any people there. We'll put her in the hole discovered her. You know, these people were so religious that our parents wouldn't have made it without something to hold on to. It was sad.
Wow.
Then about 5 years before then, my younger brother and older brother, we flew out of Seattle to Vladivostok, or near there, and visited an uncle of my dad's brother.
Yes,
Apparently his mother was 5 months pregnant, so he'd never seen this guy. And he'd see him, and he just had the action just from behind. He said, there goes Dad. It was,
Yeah, very
and
favorite is.
apparently he was drafted into through the army, and they put him out in the forest, and they had to chop. They had a quota. They had to chop so many trees down. And he said that Russians, they emptied this compound, which was a prison, and they put us all in there. And he said, I want to tell you that it was cold. It was so infested with lice. that in the summer we'd go out and sleep in the grass.
This is in Siberia.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
And he said, one day a pile of lumber slid down and pinned this guy. Or broke his leg or something. They called the Russian and said, "You know, get some equipment, we get him out." He said he can't work anyway, he went over there and shot him. So anyway, he knew where his wife and daughter were. And they were shipping him to another climate, as he said, Caucasus or wherever. And he told his buddy, "I'm gonna get off here," and so on. "I'm going home. I'm gonna see my family." He said, if they catch you, they'll shoot you. He said, "I don't care." He went there and he went to work as a tractorist on a collective, was with his family. They didn't do a thing to him.
I'll be darned.
He lived there with his grandson and his wife and their 2 children when they visited.
They just,
How did you ever track him down then?
we occasionally, depending on the political attitude, it might get a letter.
Oh, okay.
3 years, Dad would get it.
Oh, okay.
And it was written by another man. He could read, but he couldn't express himself in writing. You know, that people, they missed out on education. And then he pulled out in his chest, and he came over and he had a little Bible like this, and it was black. And he said, "This was my salvation." And he said most of the guys didn't, they used it up. I said, "What do you mean they used it up?" Well, he said they tore a piece out and made a cigarette.
Out of their Bible pages.
That was the
Wow.
Bible.
Huh.
Oh, it was. He's died since, but he said that these old eyes, he said, you know, in 23, his mother starved to death. And my father, through the years, would talk about his grandpa, and his uncle, but he never had much to say about his father. And apparently, his father was kind of a drunkard. And in fact, my mom told me one time she said, "I want to get married." And he said, "Was willst du mit dem Kerl? You know, what do you want with that guy?" He knew his. My dad never was a drinker. I don't think I ever saw him drink a second drink, but he'd take a drink with you.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that is something else.
What part of
We'll start to wind down this interview. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about? Any stories you forgot to talk? Mrs. Stoll, any stories that you know he left out you wanted to talk about? I guess kind of a wrap up there that you can think.
She's a storyteller. She tells me everything.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Is there anything that he left out that you can think of? Any stories?
Yeah, Willie, come on over.
Well, I was a really young girl when we got married, and he came home from the service, and we met in Windsor. Probably only 2 young people that were there at that time. People were starting to filter back, you know, from the service. But I really didn't realize how much he had been through and how it had affected him. He was just a young boy, and there were a lot of those.
Yeah, yeah.
I was in high school, and my graduating class, all the boys who went to the service and finished their training successfully, got their diplomas. So it was a tough time.
Yeah. Did, over the years, did you keep in touch with anybody? Go to any reunions, anything?
Yeah, we had one reunion in Omaha, and we went back to that. There, I think, was one of our group was there, and then some of the Seabees, and the one fella, I said, I remember you, every time I cut a board off, you had a comment. And so, he said, I remember you too. But I had Ackerman from Nazareth, Texas, and he went back to worked at the bank a year or two, and then he apparently took over the family farm, and after they got through chopping cotton, he'd bring his kids up, and they'd stay with us a couple of days. So we were down there one time. We went to the Alamo, and they said, looked on the map. We came by to see Acker. He had been seeing us a couple of times, and the day before we got there, they buried him.
Oh boy.
So I was in New York, and I looked at the book, and we had a little fellow there was Paul Rosenberg, and when we really wanted to show our stuff as marching, close order drill, why, Paul Rosenberg would be ahead of me, and he was shorter than I, and I was the next, so that we'd set the pace. If the other way, we had to run. And so I called, and finally we got to Washington, D.C., and I looked up Magrino. He took us out to dinner, and he and Rosenberg was a Jewish boy.
Yeah.
And so he said that Paul died. So I saw Magrino, Acker, and there was a fellow that comes to see us pretty regularly. He was in Cashew, that was Carrier Aircraft Service Unit. We were Acorn, Aviation Ordnance Repair Navy.
Okay.
And in fact, we had said it. We could do anything, everything, but make milk. We had
Yeah.
We had everything. Comment. It wasn't really true, but.
Well, one thing I want to ask you about, I think, is along the lines of what you said, Mrs. Stoll, as far as what you'd gone through. One question I always like to ask as I kind of close out these interviews is, how do you think that period of time played into your life, affected your life, changed your thoughts? How did it, or did it, or was it just a period of time? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it really made sense to me on evaluating people and their stupid attitude, and I had quite a time of it. At least when Wayne tells me, and my mother too. They talk about these guys come back a little rummy, and I guess I was too.
Is that right?
He had nightmares.
I'd feed him, I'd fight him,
In your
Get
sleep?
that goddamn rig, let's go. And
And I think, they missed out on 3 years of
Yeah,
their
right.
youth,
Yeah.
yeah.
And they came back more serious.
But
Just
other than
older.
that, you know, I just, I'm glad I was there, and I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I came back.
Wow. Well, we'll close up the interview. One thing I always like to do too is like to give you the option if there was a closing statement you'd like to make to close off this interview that for anybody that'll watch this in the future.
Well, I hope that that our grandkids and great grandkids see it, and that they remember, what I had to do,
Yeah, yeah.
and that they have to. I hope they never have to go through it. I wish I paid all the bills in 3 years.
Well, Reinhold, I want to thank you very much for sitting around and telling your story today. More importantly, though, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Well, I appreciate that. This picture was taken in Spokane, Washington, during the recruit training we had.
Prior to going overseas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Mrs. Reinhold was saying that, or Mrs. Stoll was saying that you certainly didn't look like that when you came back.
No,
Yeah.
that's my parents at the mill house in Windsor. I think it's probably a picture I carried with me.
Overseas?
Yeah.
Yeah. How would you keep something like that dry and with the elements and such? Sand out? Was there?
Just lay it in the sun occasionally, because like those cigars, hell, they got mildew. You couldn't smoke them fast enough.
How many did,
Okay, this is one of our burial on Perry Island next to Eniwetok. And he was sitting with his driver at a B-24, and the ammo went off. He hit him 3 times in the side and killed him instantly. He was a nice fella. This is with leggings, and when on guard duty, when they really got military, they had to have all the uniform. They published, and when things quieted down, they called it uniform of the day. And if they said one button, you had to have it closed, and long sleeve, or whatever. This shows a picture of me sitting in like a half track. We use that to park planes with a long tongue.
Okay.
This picture is my mother and my older sister came to visit me one weekend in Oklahoma City when I was going through aviation machinist mate school in Norman, Oklahoma.
Okay. Once again, before you went overseas.
Yes,
Okay.
before. This is taken along the canal in Norfolk, Virginia, on Liberty. Taken in Windsor with Robert Weimeister, who joined the Navy with me, who since died. He was on the U.S. Missouri when they signed the peace. And I said, "Where were you?" And he said, "I was down standing a watch in the motor room."
Oh boy.